So Nintendo finally gave us another look at Star Fox Zero a few weeks ago, in both the Nintendo Direct as well as through new gameplay on the Japanese website. And at first, a lot of it might look pretty familiar. But if you dig a little deeper, it turns out Nintendo's tweaked quite a few things since we last saw the game at E3. So you know what that means. It's time to turn on the Analysis Machine's G-Diffuser system to unlock all the secrets new gameplay is hiding. But as usual, we're only going to be covering the new stuff here, so make sure to check out our previous analysis from E3 for even more. You'll find a link to it in the description below. And with that, let's get started. Okay, so let's get the biggest details out of the way first. And the biggest addition by far is the first actual gameplay of a snow-based world. And if the Analysis Machine could place bets, it'd go all in on this being Fichina, the snow world featured in Star Fox 64. You know, seeing as how every other planet-based level we've seen so far is also from that game. I mean, the overall setting is nearly identical, being an all-range mode level set in a hilly field covered in snow. Now in the original game, there was a base in the middle that you had to enter in order to defuse a bomb that Andros has set up. But this time, there doesn't appear to be any such base here. I mean, we can clearly see that the vast majority of the field is just hills. But after carefully watching the footage a lot, I noticed that while we see most of the field, we don't see all of it. For instance, if we use a large moon or planet here in the background as a reference point, let's say 12 o'clock, we never actually see the area at roughly 4 o'clock to it. So could they be hiding something there, like a base? It would explain why all the enemies are here, since there appears to be nothing else of interest. Or is there? Because in this clip, we can see the Great Fox hanging out in the distance, which means it probably plays some kind of role in this stage. But what exactly? One idea is that maybe Fox and the gang need to clear out enough enemies so that it can safely land, so perhaps they have to defend it from attack in the process. After all, we can see some pretty hefty looking artillery on the ground to launch missiles, instead of the usual energy-based attacks. Could they be targeting the Great Fox? The missiles do seem to be heading in that general direction, but that could just be a coincidence too. Besides that idea, we think there's a chance the Great Fox may serve another, more exciting purpose. Because, while most of the gameplay showcases the R-Wing being used in this level, one of the clips showcases the Landmaster instead, including in its Gravmaster form. And this is the first time in Star Fox Zero that we've seen two different vehicles being used for the same mission, which is also a significant departure from Star Fox 64, where you only ever used one vehicle per level. So the question is, are you able to choose different vehicles for every level, or only specific ones? After all, both the R-Wing and Landmaster are somewhat interchangeable between their two forms. But despite this, we don't actually think you'd be able to choose a vehicle on a per level basis, since we've already seen the opening cutscenes in several levels which seems to dictate the vehicle you start with. So instead, we think the Great Fox might be the key to this. What if it can swap vehicles simply by flying into its docking bay? After all, if we assume the mountains in the background serve as a boundary for this area, the Great Fox is well within those parameters. Supporting this idea is the fact that in the R-Wing clips, the enemy counter is at 0, which suggests that the mission just started, whereas in the Landmaster clip, Fox has already racked up 9 kills, which suggests he switched to it after starting in the R-Wing. So if the Great Fox is indeed key to swapping vehicles, then perhaps he'll play a similar role in other levels too. After all, back in the E3 trailer, the Great Fox also appeared in another all-range level that took place in space. Although we do have to say we don't think swapping vehicles would be an option in that case, because even though the Landmaster's alternate form can fly, the fact that its name is a Gravmaster, showcasing a supremacy over gravity, might suggest it won't actually work in space, where gravity is obviously less of a factor. At any rate, now that we know Fichina is a thing, that marks the 8th level in Star Fox Zero that we know about, which means there are still potentially 7 left to be revealed, at least if the amount of levels in Star Fox 64 is anything to go by. And speaking of which, in the original game, Fichina was your first opportunity to meet Team Starwolf, so could that be the case here too? Okay, that's quite enough about Fichina, because there's a lot more to talk about. Okay, now I know all the rest looks somewhat familiar, but there have actually been quite a few tweaks to the game since E3. And the biggest of those tweaks has to be these bad boys right here. Yep, those are smart bombs, as seen in pretty much every other Star Fox game ever. And we even see one in action in this scene. And not surprisingly, they act just like they have before, destroying any enemy within its blast radius. Only this time, the explosion is a more realistic red instead of blue. Although it does look like the Gyro Wing will miss out on the smart bomb fun, as there are no bomb icons for it here, nor even a place for them to go, being above the boost meter, which is also absent. Now we also noticed that the R-Wing's walker form didn't have any bomb icons either, although it's possible the player just burned through them earlier on. Now interestingly, every single gameplay clip with the R-Wing or Landmaster shows a player starting with 3 bombs. Now at first, that seems right, as you also started Star Fox 64 with 3 bombs. But here's the thing, in Star Fox 64, the number of smart bombs that carry over from level to level, which means odds of having 3 at the start of every one is pretty low. So we can't help but wonder this might mean that you might start every level with 3 bombs this time, regardless of however many you had before. Adding to this idea is the fact that we don't see any bomb power-ups either. Although we would be pretty surprised if they don't actually return, particularly as there's clearly space to store at least 2 more in the area above the boost meter. And then there's the fact that you can store up to 9 in Star Fox 64. But here's another idea. So if we assume that the amount of bombs do in fact still carry over level to level, could this hint at the idea that you might be able to choose individual levels to play instead of making you play through the entire game? After all, Star Fox 64 3D introduced this very idea with score attack, so we wouldn't be surprised to see a similar mode return here as well. Now besides the addition of bombs, the overall HUD has gotten a facelift since E3 too. Take the enemy counter for example, which now features a much sleeker looking font, with the word hits moved to the right as well. There's also the rather peculiar addition of a 1 followed by a hyphen, and that number never changes at all throughout the gameplay. But we have a feeling it's related to the gold ring counter in some way, since it's, right next to it, and also features a similar gold hue. Now there's something else new here too, 3 unfilled slots. But in another clip, we can actually see one of them filled in with a red, white, and blue ribbon. Now as you might recall from our previous analysis, we saw that exact same ribbon attached to a collectible medal in Titania. Although, it seems like the medals might have been redesigned since then, because we can see that exact same ribbon just left of the Great Fox in Fichina. Only this time, instead of being attached to a medal, it's inside a gold ring. At any rate, it seems like there'll be 3 of them to find in every level. Or at least most levels, because those medal icons are actually missing from the scenes that take place in Zonus. Instead, the icons have been swapped out for a counter that goes up to 10, and we can see exactly what that counter is for in the next clip, where the direct eye collects a silver coin that adds 1 to the counter, and we can see a second coin just behind the first. Now as you might recall, there was a similar looking coin around the same portion in the E3 demo, only it looked a bit different back then, where it was bronze instead of silver, and had a gold star on it instead of the familiar Star Fox icon. Anyways, the fact that there were 10 of these suckers to find likely means that the Gyro Wings missions, or at least this one, are more focused on exploration than the others. But there is one odd thing about that counter, because during a gameplay clip from an earlier portion of the level, it appears to be grayed out and inactive, whereas it's much brighter later on. But why? Well, maybe it only becomes active after Rob or someone tells you about it, although that seems a bit unlikely. So we do have one other idea, and it's related to something else odd about this clip, because not only is the number counter grayed out, but the enemy hit counter is orange instead of blue here too, which is something we also see in one of the Cornerian clips. So what's that about? Now we should mention that Star Fox 64, the color of that counter did in fact change once it killed enough enemies to satisfy the requirements for the medal. But that's clearly not what's happening here, as the players racked up a grand total of 1 kill. So instead, could it be related to the score attack idea that we floated earlier? Maybe the color changes to reinforce the idea that you're playing a different mode, which would also explain why the coin counter is grayed out, because it wouldn't be relevant. Now speaking of the enemy hit counter, there are several gameplay portions where the player can be seen playing a later phase of a level, and yet has almost no kills, such as in Phase 3 in Corneria or Phase 2 in Sector Alpha, where it should be impossible to have a score that low. In fact, between all of the new gameplay, we don't see a single new phase in the level without the score resetting to 0. So maybe the game tabulates each level's score differently this time, treating each phase as its own section. Or maybe it's just a side effect of Nintendo's development team having the ability to start playing wherever they doggone want. Okay, so that covers it for all the big changes since E3, but there are still some more subtle ones that you might have missed. For example, Miyamoto had previously explained that one of the reasons Star Fox Zero had been delayed was to enhance the cutscenes, and we might be able to see some slight evidence of that in the new footage, such as how the camera now pulls in closer to the R-Wing before it begins its descent into Corneria, which is now also accompanied by improved atmosphere effects, including better looking fire and new clouds that the R-Wing passes through. Then we had this cutscene in Sector Alpha, where the R-Wing transforms into the Walker, but this time it now happens in slow motion, making it feel a bit more cinematic. Along similar lines, the dialogue for the enemy here has been changed, making them sound more uncertain or subservient than before. Now besides cutscenes and dialogue, we can see other slight tweaks in pretty much every level, such as how the spotlights in Zonus are now green instead of yellow, and feature a lot more detail than the totally flat color before. They've also added some explosive blocks on the right here, which we're guessing will help out once you open the door ahead. And speaking of color changes, the terminals that the direct eye can interact with are now green instead of red, and feature a reticle icon on them, making it even more evident that they're interactive. And finally, when the silo opens up, we can see the energy beam not only looks a lot better now, but a second energy beam has been added beneath it that rotates. Oh, and the chamber has new lighting effects along the edges too. Now if we go back to Sector Alpha, we can see there are a lot more enemy ships in the background here, and each one sports a lot more detail too, such as varied body panels and enhanced looking guns. And when you enter the large ship near the end, the lights on the ramp have been changed from blue to red, perhaps to better signify that this is an enemy base. Next up is Titania, which features different enemy placement than before. Oh, and the silver ring here has been pushed back slightly. And similarly, in Corneria, we can see the addition of a gold ring when you destroy this portion of the boss. Now this one's a bit interesting for a couple of reasons, because it either means that one of the rings that we pointed out in the previous analysis has been moved, which would still make for 3 total, or it is indeed a 4th ring, which could in fact mean that the gold rings work like they did in Star Fox 64, instead of some of our ideas from our past analysis. And speaking of things working like how they have before, one of the gameplay clips confirms the return of the green twin laser upgrade, which is missing from the E3 version. So this likely means the laser upgrades now follow the same pattern as the original 64 game, going from the single laser, to the twin laser, to the hyper laser with each progressive laser upgrade. Finally, we notice that the talking head boxes have been improved too. For instance, whenever either Fox or one of the teammates pops up, their head now appears to shake within the box, as if they're being shaken around inside their aircraft, which is a nice touch. Then if we take a look at the Primate character here, we can see his lips actually have a couple of different movements, instead of the simple bobblehead effect seen in Star Fox 64. And then we have this scene, which shows the characters looking around. Now while it may not be from actual gameplay, it does seem to support the idea that the characters will be a bit more animated than before. Alright, and that covers it for everything from the actual gameplay portion of the Nintendo Direct. But there's still one element we haven't touched on yet, and that's a pre-rendered trailer that came before the gameplay. So let's take a quick look at it and see what else it might be hiding. Okay, so the CG trailer opens up by showcasing the three main vehicles in action: the R-Wing in Corneria, the Gyro Wing in Zonus, and the Landmaster back in Corneria. Now can you guess which of those three doesn't belong? Yep, the Landmaster's the odd one out here, as we haven't seen it in action on Corneria at all. And while this was likely just done for the trailer, could it be hinting at some kind of Landmaster usage in Corneria in the final game? Now each of those vehicles is piloted by a different member of the Star Fox team, with Peppy manning the Landmaster and Slippy the Gyro Wing. And this is pretty interesting because in Star Fox 64, Fox's teammates only ever piloted the R-Wings. So is there a chance they may actually use other vehicles this time around? Or maybe this was just done for the trailer too. Now speaking of vehicles, we can see Fox's R-Wing turn into a walker in space. And he does this in order to finish off one of the enemy ships. Now we already knew they could still turn into a walker while in space from the E3 demo, but this trailer suggests it may actually serve some purpose, beyond just making you fall to the bottom of the screen. Okay, moving on, there's a really cool detail when the camera zooms in on Peppy, because if we zoom in even further onto his control panel, we can see a picture of him along with Sergeant Pepper, as well as Fox's dad, James McCloud, which basically confirms that James McCloud will still play a role in this game, likely as a founding member of Team Star Fox, along with Peppy. But where's Pigma Dengar? After all, he too was one of the founders of Star Fox 64, but he's nowhere to be found in this picture. So was his backstory changed? Or maybe this picture was taken after Pigma's defection? Okay, so on the whole, the CG trailer looks pretty cool, right? And given how elaborate it is, we can't help but wonder these clips might actually be snippets of actual cutscenes from the game. After all, that would further tie into the idea of Star Fox Zero being delayed in order to improve the cinematic nature of the game. Alright, and that wraps up for the CG trailer too. But there's still one more detail from the Nintendo Direct that I wanted to point out. And it's hidden in the vehicle title card sandwiched between the gameplay scenes. Because if you look at the background, you can see all kinds of cool diagrams and text, some of which is actually readable, such as the label for the famous G diffuser system. And if we bring up the Landmaster title card, we can see a description that says, Plasma Engine, followed by NTD-FX 0 type. But what does that mean? Well, the FX might just be a shortened Fox, missing the O, which would tie into the whole Zero that follows immediately after, Star Fox Zero. But alternatively, it might actually be a reference to the FX chip that powered the original Star Fox and Super Nintendo. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. But what about the NTD? Well, as it turns out, Nintendo has a division called Nintendo Technology Development, or NTD for short. Pretty sneaky, Nintendo. And there you have it, it's everything we could dig up on Star Fox Zero. But as usual, let us know if we missed anything by posting in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and make sure to stay tuned to GameXplain for more on Star Fox Zero and other things gaming too.